Hello, everyone. This week is Parshat Ekev. Parshat Ekev has in it probably one of the most famous songs that we all grew up on of Eretz Chitao Seora Vegefen Utuna Rimel. So it's not a song; it's actually a pasuk first. And based on that, we have a very known halacha that on the fruits that are part of Perot Nishtabcha B'Eretz Yisrael, the fruits that are mentioned in that pasuk. There's a special bracha that we make, Birkat Me'in Shalosh, that, or as we call it, the Alamichya, and that are the fruit that is said for things that are mezonot, wine, and also fruits that are part of Shivat HaMinim, so grapes and figs and pomegranates and dates and olives. So in the bracha itself, in source 1, I'm assuming you all know it by heart, the same way that I was tested before I went to high school. I think that was one of the tests, was knowing Alamicha by heart. In Alamicha, and I bolded those words, it says, Le'echol ni priya v'lizba mitova. But the words before is that how we bless Hashem, we thank Hashem for giving us the fruits of the land and giving us the good land, Eretz Tova u'rechava, sheratzita v'inchalta lavotenu, that you wanted and you inherited it and you gave it to our forefathers, and it seems in order to eat its fruit and enjoy the goodness, to be satisfied from the goodness of that land. And then the bracha goes on and on. But basically what we see here is that, so to speak, part of the reason we got Eretz Yisrael is in order to eat the fruit and enjoy the goodness of the land of Israel. Now, one would assume that this comes from based off of the psukim that are mentioned in our parasha in source 2. In source 2, the pasuk says, "Ki Hashem Elokecha miviacha le'eretz tova." Hashem brings you to this good land. Eretz nachalei mayim, ma'anot u'tumot. It has all kinds of water resources, and the mountains and the valleys. Pasuk chet, the fruits. Eretz chitao seora vegefen utena verimon. Eretz zetshem udvash. You won't eat bread in a poor way, in a complicated way. You won't miss anything. The rocks are from iron, and from the mountains you'll have copper. You'll have nechoshet. You will bless Hashem for the good land that He gave you. And this pasuk Yud, is generally known as the source for the reason we make brachot, especially benching to Hashem. There are two more psukim in Yirmiyahu and Nehemiah that also talk about Pirya v'Tuva. V'arietchem in Yirmiyahu el Eretz HaKarmel. Hashem brought us to the good land. Le'echol Pirya v'Tuva, to eat its good fruits, and of the generally of the good fruits of and the goodness of Eretz Yisrael. And also in Nehemiah, Hinei anachnu hayom avadim. Now we are slaves, in the land that you gave to our forefathers, which you gave to eat the fruits and of its goodness. We are now slaves on it, and that is, and these are the psukim. Based on them, does the Alamichya say in source 3, though, a very famous Gemara, which talks about actually last week's parasha, about Parshat Vayechanan. Why is it that Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to go into Eretz Yisrael? So the Gemara says, "Mipnei ma." What was the reason? That Moshe Rabbeinu desired so much to go into Eretz Yisrael. And the question is, what does he need it in order to eat its fruits, or to eat or to enjoy from its goodness? Rather, the Gemara then says that Moshe really wanted to go into Eretz Yisrael in order to be mekayem the mitzvot of Eretz Yisrael, which you can't do outside. Kadosh Baruch Hu says, don't worry about it, you'll get rewarded otherwise. That's a Parashat Vayechanan discussion. But the question that is asked here by the Gemara is basically saying, it can't be that Moshe wanted to go into Eretz Yisrael just to eat its fruits and to enjoy its goodness. But those are exactly the reasons we say, Alamichya, those are exactly the so to speak, the descriptions that we say of Eretz Yisrael. And that's what's mentioned in Alamichya. So if Moshe didn't need that, what we do need that? So obviously we could say that Moshe and us are not on the same level, but it's still a little weird to say it in such a way. So when it comes down to the halacha, so the two says that the Katuv Sefer HaMitzvot, that it's mentioned in the Sefer HaMitzvot, that we should say V'nochal mipriya v'nizba mituva, that it's mentioned in the Alamicha Nusach to say those words. But the Tur says Ve'ein lo, but you shouldn't say those words in the Alamicha. And the reason is She'ein lachmod ha'aretz v'shvil priya v'tuva, that you shouldn't want the land just for its fruit and its goodness. Rather, Ela lekayem mitzvot hatluyot ba, the same way that Moshe Rabbeinu did. The only reason we want Eretz Yisrael is because we want to have the ability to be mekayem the mitzvot that are special in Eretz Yisrael, not to enjoy its goodness in any shape or form. And he says, and his father, the Rosh, also didn't say it. That's his bottom line, not to say it. The Beit Yosef says you should, and when he tries to explain why the Tur said what he said, he says, Nir'eh ta'amo, he thinks that maybe the reasoning of the Tur was that what we say of Nochal Mipriya v'nizba mituva eina tachlit b'shvil ha'achia, אלא מה שאומר אחר כך, הוא נברך לך להביושה וטהורה הוא התכלית. In other words, because the real reasoning of what we say is not the eating, rather it is the benching in Kedusha and Tahara. But the only way to do it is because of the eating. How can we say blessings to Hashem? By eating. So therefore, if I would have found a different way to bless Hashem, then I wouldn't have needed the fruits and vegetables, the vegetables, the goodness of the land. We wouldn't have needed that. We would have been able to bench Hashem in a different way. But because we couldn't find a different way to do it, so to speak, so that's the reason. So really what's important is to bless Hashem. The only way to do it, so to speak, the way to make it work is by eating fruits and eating the fruits and enjoying the goodness. That's therefore no point of saying it because that's not important by itself. But the Bach also says we should say it. תימא לא קדושת הארץ הנשפט בה מקדושת הארץ העליונה היא נשפט, גם בפירותיה שנקים מקדושת השכינה שוכן בקרב הארץ. I understand this problem. Of course we're enjoying the Kedusha of the land because the Kedusha of the land comes from the higher levels of Kedusha, which comes through the fruits, and that comes from the Shekhinah. So basically Hashem's presence, Hashem's high Kedusha, it comes down to us in an earthly manner through the fruits that are coming from the land, and of course we are blessing that. So of course it makes sense that we say in the bracha those words. By eating the fruits of Eretz Yisrael, we are basically nourishing from the Kedusha of Hashem and from its pureness, and we are enjoying that on some level, which again is not maybe it's not a very simple understanding, but that's what it really means, and therefore we should say those words. So the Mo'uk Tziyah, the Yabetz in his Sefer, the Mo'uk Tziyah, he basically says again this idea in source 5, and he says, of course we should say it, like the Beit Yosef says, and even though the Gemara says what it says, we'll go to the third line, maybe Moshe Rabbeinu didn't need that, but we, anu vaday tzrichim lehem, of course we need the fruits and the goodness of the land. Maybe Moshe Rabbeinu was able to get it from other sources, from Hashem himself, but we need any source of Kedusha that we could get. Ki pirot Eretz Yisrael mosifim koach vechokhmah. They add strength and add, so to speak, more brains or more sense. Kmo shekatuv be'avira demachin, that Eretz Yisrael, just the air in Eretz Yisrael gets you smarter, and therefore that's a reason to eat it. That's a reason to eat the pirot of Eretz Yisrael. As opposed, I won't say anything about what says on labels of different products that we buy, but many times we are very afraid of eating products from Eretz Yisrael because we don't know what to do with the Truma, the Maestro, Shvi, Shmita. We don't know what to do. We'd rather manage without it. No, we should try as much as we can to enjoy them because we are getting special Kedusha from that. And if it means we have to understand in a better level how to manage that, then be it. Learn the halachot of Trumot and Maasrot, so you should know how to manage. But don't be afraid of eating that. It's actually the opposite. You should look and find specifically the fruits of Eretz Israel, so you will be able to get that Kedusha that you are able to get, and not run away from that. Because by us realize that that Eretz Israel is giving more fruit, as the Gemara says in source 6 in Masechet Sanhedrin, that we, by seeing how the land is producing more fruits, we are seeing the fact that the Mashiach is coming. Amar Rabbi Abba, en lecha ketz meguleh b'zeh. This is a clear sign of the times of Mashiach, of the ketz, of the end of times, which therefore means Mashiach is coming. Because the Gemara, the pasuk in Yechezkel says, "V'atem harei Yisrael," the mountains of Eretz Yisrael, anfechem titnu, their branches will give, ufrechem tisu, it will raise, it will carry the fruits, because Mashiach is coming, as Rashi says, "Meguleh mizeh shetiten Eretz Yisrael kriya be'ayin yafa." When Eretz Yisrael will bring its fruits in a good manner, az yikarev ketz, then that means that we're up to Mashiach, the times of Mashiach. So that's one point of it. That's another point of it. In other words, if one point of eating of the specialty or the special benefit of eating the pirot of Eretz Yisrael is the fact that we are enjoying the Kedusha of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael. We see also that Mashiach, it means that Mashiach is coming. So another point that we've mentioned before in our shiur for Parashat Kedoshim, so I won't read it inside also, just the bottom line here in source 7, one of the things what is the first things that Hashem did in the world was plant trees. Go 2 rows from the bottom of source 7. From the beginning of creation of the world, what was the first thing that God did? He planted trees. As it says, that Hashem planted a garden in Eden. Now it's also us when we go into Eretz Yisrael. The first thing we should do, the first thing we should do is when we go into Eretz Yisrael is plant trees. As it says, that when you come in to the land, that you should plant trees and then have the mitzvot of orla. So by us planting trees in Eretz Yisrael and therefore afterwards eating its fruits, we are participating on some level in the creation that HaKadosh Baruch Hu did in the world. Another point, which is brought in Shivat Zion, which is the sefer written by Rabbi Mohaliver, one of the first religious Zionist rabbis back in the days of Chibat Zion, before the Hapoel Mizrahi or Mizrahi was even a movement. So he points out that the mitzvah of living in Eretz Yisrael is a mitzvah by itself, and that mitzvah is Keneged Kol HaMitzvot Shebatorah, as important as all the mitzvot of the Torah. He wrote a whole book on that, basically. But so he basically says that there are 2 ways of doing that. I'm not reading the words inside; it would be too much to translate. But you could follow in a source 8 how Bazman Hazeh in our days are 2 ways to do it: by buying a piece of land, or by actually living there and fighting off the war. And therefore, so in his times, we couldn't fight the war yet, so he was raising money to buy parts of land in Eretz Yisrael. And when you do that, you are basically fulfilling the mitzvah of inheriting the land and sitting in it. And therefore, it has all kinds of side effects of maybe a doche shvut melacha deoraita and all kinds of other parts. And again, this has 2 aspects. First of all, the sitting in the land itself, obviously living in Eretz Yisrael is a mitzvah, yeshiva ba'aretz, and yeshuv ba'aretz, helping those who are sitting in the land. And that also has 2 different ways of doing that. One is by planting trees, and one is by living in or by building houses, and third is also vegetables. And again, he quotes the same medrash we just said now, of how HaKadosh Baruch Hu also planted trees, and this is also fulfilling of that. So maybe by eating fruits of Eretz Yisrael, we are basically participating in the mitzvah of sitting in the land of Eretz Yisrael as well. I was told this week that the Israeli government is maybe promoting a law that will have a sticker on every product that's made in Israel that it will say that it was manufactured in Israel, obviously fruits and vegetables as well. so that will to promote more buying products of Eretz Israel. So that maybe by that they will be helping us fulfilling this mitzvah according to Rabbi Mohaliver. Rav Charlap, one of the famous Talmidim of Rav Kook, points this out as well to a point that enjoying the land of Eretz Israel is participating, or maybe not the word participating, is having the ability to touch Olam Haba in Olam Hazeh. And he says that Eretz Israel, to some point, the end of the first line, Ki Eretz Israel, Eretz, even though Eretz Israel looks like Eretz Kechol Shar Haratzot, Be'emet lo kenu, the land of Israel looks like any other land. There's streets, there are buildings, there are houses, there's a government that functions better or less like any other government in the world, and has just as like anything else, it works or not, but rather, but all the treasures that are inside it, they're not something that every person can see. They're like Olam Haba. Only God himself can do it, and that's why God said to Avraham Avinu when he went to the land, I have to show it to you, because you won't be able to understand. Even Avraham Avinu won't be able to understand its goodness. Only I, Kadosh Baruch Hu, when I will show it to him, will you be able to understand properly the special goodness that Eretz Yisrael has. And the last quote I will bring in this matter is what Rav Kook himself in Orot HaKodesh points out, that even though you could become the Gashmiut part, the physical part of food of made in Israel or made in Chicago is the same thing. Food is food; it nourishes you. If you eat too much, you get fat. If you don't eat enough, you'll be skinny. It's not that if the food itself has a different physical aspect, but the inside Kedusha, the eating of fruit of Eretz Israel, gives you Kedusha in your inner self. And he says, but when you have to eat fruits from foods that are made in Chutz La'aretz, because that's what you have. But again, if you have that anticipation to Eretz Israel, then the food itself, to a point, raises the level of the Kedusha even of that fruit. Even if you have a fruit from California, but you really wanted to have a fruit from Eretz Israel, but you don't have it right now. But since you really want to have that fruit from Eretz Israel, even the fruit from California has a level, has the ability to raise its level of Kedusha. And he says that that's the reason why we say, before the benching, we say Shir HaMa'alot, or we say Al Na'arot Bavel, we mention Eretz Israel, because especially when it comes to the food, we anticipate or look forward to being back in Eretz Israel even more than any other time, because the food of Eretz Israel has that ability, has that Kedusha that we are so much awaiting for. So when we will read tomorrow the psukim that describe the goodness of Eretz Israel, we will once again be reminded of how good Eretz Israel is on so many different levels, how much we anticipate that, how much we are thankful for the ability to be living in Eretz Israel and enjoying those fruits of Eretz Israel. I wish that one day those coming from Chicago or New York or anywhere else in the world won't have to wait 2 weeks to actually come visit. Rather, when they come, they will right away be able to participate in this in our special land. And in the meantime, you are more than welcome to buy specifically products from Eretz Israel. But hopefully this will be something that we will be able to enjoy as soon as possible. This week is the last week I am in the hospital. Hopefully next Friday I get to leave rehab and come back home. So I am told, I don't remember this, but I'm told that when you live at home an hour and a half before Shabbos, I might have other things to do. So it might be the last shiur, but I'm not. I can't promise. Maybe next week people will help me otherwise, but maybe 1 or 2 other weeks. But then I guess I'll have to go back to being in charge of different things in the house, which I probably never was. But that's a different problem. So thank you very much for participating, and Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.